Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a really close look at Arthur Avalon's The Serpent Power.
Yeah.
Specifically, we're focusing on section 6.
Right, the part called practice, yoga, Laya Krama, that's pages, 181 through 256?
Exactly. And the interesting thing is, while the earlier parts sort of lay out the theory, the philosophy,
the groundwork,
this section is different. It's really about the practice, the actual methods, how you supposedly awaken and guide this inner power, the Kuṇḍalinī Shakti.
That's right. It shifts, away from just describing Śiva and Shakti or the map of the chakras and nadis. Here, it's much more about the dynamic process, the actual how-to of Laya Krama yoga.
Right.
So we'll be looking at the preliminary steps, the specific techniques, breath, visualization, concentration, and what the text says happens, the experiences you might have as Kuṇḍalinī moves up.
Okay, sounds fascinating. Let's unpack the practical side described in these pages. Let's try and understand this methodology it lays out. So this section kicks things off by, setting the stage for actually doing the practice. What kind of preparation or, prerequisites does it talk about? What do you need before starting Laya Krama yoga?
Well, the source material really stresses that this isn't for just anyone jumping in unprepared.
Okay.
It strongly emphasizes needing a competent guru. Initiation, guidance, they're presented as essential for safety, for effectiveness.
So not a DIY project then?
Definitely not, according to this text.
Yeah.
And beyond the guru, it talks about preliminary purification.
Purification, meaning?
It covers ethical conduct, being physically clean, but also purifying the nadis, those subtle energy channels we've discussed before.
Okay. Cleaning the pipes, so to speak.
Sort of, yeah. And having a tranquil mind, finding a suitable, secluded place. These are also seen as pretty important for getting the concentration you need.
Right. Makes sense. You need the right setup, internally and externally. So assuming a practitioner, a saka, is ready, guided, prepared, what's the core principle here? Laya Krama, what does Laya actually mean in this context?
Laya, it translates roughly as dissolution or maybe absorption.
Dissolution, okay.
So the core idea of Laya Krama yoga, as it's detailed here, is this conscious process. You're aiming to dissolve or absorb the energies and the principles linked to the lower centers.
The lower chakras.
Exactly, absorbing them into the higher ones. And the ultimate goal is the dissolution of your individual consciousness into the supreme consciousness.
Wow. Okay, so it's a systematic climb.
You could say that, a systematic ascent. The practitioner tries to unite the lower energies and the states of awareness that go with them, with the higher ones. And it all culminates in uniting that individual Kuṇḍalinī Shakti with Śiva, the supreme principle, up in the highest center.
That's a really powerful idea. It's not just about activating energy. It's about dissolving the limits at each level as you go up. So how does the text say you actually start this? What are the key techniques involved?
Right. The section goes into several techniques that work together. Pranayama breath control is absolutely fundamental.
Breath control, okay, like specific types.
Yes, particularly breath retention, which is called kumhaka. And then there are specific mudras, symbolic gestures, body positions, and bandhas, which are like energetic locks.
Locks?
Yeah, like Mula Bandha, the root lock, and Uddiyana Bandha, the abdominal lock. The text mentions these are used to help direct prana, the life force, and to, stir Kuṇḍalinī awake.
Okay, breath, locks. What else?
Visualization. This is presented as absolutely central. The practitioner has to visualize the chakras vividly. Their elements, the deities associated with them, the letters, and the path Kuṇḍalinī is supposed to take.
So it's a combination of physical actions, breath, locks, and intense mental focus. Imagery.
Exactly. They work hand in hand.
How does the text explain the role of that visualization? How does focusing on the chakras actually do anything in this system?
Well, the text frames visualization as more than just, making pictures in your head. It's seen as a direct way to focus your consciousness and your energy.
Okay.
It describes meditating intensely on each chakra, often focusing on its bija mantra, that's the seed sound for that center or maybe the form of the deity said to reside there. And this intense concentration, this visualization, combined with the breath control and the bandhas, that's described as the mechanism for gathering prana and directing it to awaken the coiled Kuṇḍalinī at the Muladhara, the base chakra.
So thought guides energy, essentially.
That seems to be the idea. The energy of consciousness is guided by focused thought and concentrated prana.
Okay, so let's say Kuṇḍalinī is awakened through these methods.
Yeah.
How does the text describe its ascent, the Shanchakrabheda, the piercing of the 6 centers? What's that like, practically speaking, according to these pages?
The description makes it sound like a very forceful process, but also one that needs to be controlled.
Forceful but controlled.
As the awakened Kuṇḍalinī enters the central channel, the Sushumna, it's guided upwards by the practitioner's will, by their prana, their concentration, and as it hits each chakra, it's visualized as literally piercing it or dissolving the specific energies and principles tied to that center.
Piercing or dissolving.
Yeah. The details given suggest it's an intense experience. It requires, strong resolve. Successfully getting through a chakra means the energy and consciousness tied to that level are absorbed, freeing the practitioner from the limitations associated with that specific center.
The text also mentions specific experiences that can happen during this ascent, right? What sort of internal phenomena might someone encounter as Kuṇḍalinī moves up, according to the section?
Yeah, this is where it gets pretty vivid, actually. It doesn't just talk in abstracts. It describes really profound internal experiences.
Like what?
Things like intense heat or sensations of energy rushing upwards along the spine, internal sounds. Yes, nada. Manifesting as different tones, like bells or flutes or thunder, things like that. And visions, light, geometric forms, maybe deities associated with the chakras being pierced.
Wow.
There are even descriptions of the body feeling like it's vibrating intensely or even dissolving. These aren't just dismissed. They're presented as signs of progress, indicators that the subtle body system is genuinely being activated.
It really paints a picture of a powerful and potentially reality-altering internal journey.
It certainly does.
So after all this, the preparation, the techniques, the intense experiences, what is the ultimate goal? According to these specific pages on the practice of Laya Krama, where does this ascent finally lead?
The ultimate aim, as laid out in this practical section, is the union of Kuṇḍalinī Shakti with the supreme Śiva principle up in the Sahasrara.
The 1,000-petaled lotus at the crown.
Exactly. That union is the peak of this whole process of dissolution of Laya. The text describes this state as samadhi.
Samadhi, the highest state of consciousness.
Yes. Characterized by, boundless bliss, illumination, and the direct realization of the ultimate reality. It's the state where the individual consciousness is said to merge completely with the supreme consciousness. It's presented as the practical path to liberation, mukti, the return to the source.
So we've really unpacked the detailed methodology of Laya Krama Yoga as Avalon presents it in the Serpent Power, specifically looking at the techniques, the practice, the experiences described in Section 6. We've seen how it uses breath, visualization, these energy locks, intense concentration, all in a very systematic process aimed at consciously dissolving lower states into higher ones, aiming for that ultimate union.
And understanding these, really specific practical instructions gives you a much deeper insight into the path this text lays out. It really highlights how this system sees itself not just as a philosophy, but as a rigorous discipline.
With very specific techniques.
Exactly. Techniques aimed squarely at achieving a defined spiritual goal, working directly through the subtle body.
So, thinking about all this, what does it mean for you listening? Maybe consider the idea that even these incredibly abstract spiritual goals, like liberation or merging with the absolute, can be approached, at least in this tradition, through highly specific, systematic, almost psychophysical practices. This text offers one incredibly detailed map for that kind of journey.
A very specific map.
And here's something to maybe mull over.
Yeah.
If consciousness can potentially be guided and transformed so systematically through this kind of focused internal work, what might that suggest about the potential hidden within other disciplined practices, even ones that aren't explicitly labeled as yogic?
That's an interesting thought.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the practice section of the Serpent Power. We hope exploring these complex techniques and ideas is giving you some interesting food for thought.